In Planet Reddit, today's story is...
My stepmother staged a robbery to get me out of the house, which happened 4 years later, leaving my father completely alone and regretful. Let me give you some background on my situation. I am 22 years old, and I graduated from university about a month ago. Since then, I have been living temporarily with my father and my stepmother. Both my father and I know that this arrangement is only temporary, mainly because I don't get along with my stepmother, and I have no intention of staying with her in the long term. Veronica, which is my stepmother's name, doesn't like me much either, so it's not as if she's sad that she doesn't like me. My biological mother passed away when I was 9 years old. When I turned 17, my father started a relationship with Veronica, and by the time I reached my 20s, they were already married. From the beginning, she showed little interest in treating me well. I never understood why a woman in her 30s decided to dislike a teenager for no apparent reason, but that was the case with Veronica. Despite the fact that she was considerably older than me, and really had no reason to look down on me, she displayed a rather strange attitude towards me from the start. Perhaps she considered me a rival for my father's attention, or something similar. In my case, I did not feel an immediate rejection towards her. In fact, I tried to establish a cordial relationship, but when I noticed that she was not interested in maintaining that kind of bond, I began to ignore her. We shared a house until I left for university, and it wasn't a pleasant experience because she was constantly looking for ways to make me uncomfortable. Naturally, I wasn't keen on the idea of returning to this house, but until I get a job and can afford to pay rent, it's what I have to do. I had already resigned myself to it, but Veronica doesn't want me to stay here even for a short period of time. During my university years, I would return for holidays or some weekends, even if only for short periods. At that time, her behavior was tolerable because I knew I would soon be returning to university, and I avoided creating unnecessary conflicts. But now it's not a matter of a few days, and whatever I do seems to bother her because, according to her, I interrupt her peace of mind or something like that. Her way of showing discontent is to make my life impossible, which shows her great maturity and adult behavior. We have had constant arguments when my father is not present, but when he comes home, she pretends that everything is going perfectly, as if nothing had happened. I know that telling my father about this is pointless, because he will probably think I am exaggerating, as he knows a very different side of my stepmother. I also don't want to be petty or give her the satisfaction of showing her that it affects me, because I know that's what she's looking for. However, her recent action can no longer be considered a simple argument, so I can't just ignore it. That's why I decided to press charges against her, and now my father claims that I was the one who provoked her, and that my behavior is wrong. What happened was this. 5 days ago, we had an argument about something really trivial, as is often the case with her. My father was at work, and I was busy applying for jobs online in the morning. While I was completing an application, Veronica abruptly burst into my room and started shouting at me about the amount of dirty clothes I had, arguing that they were taking up the washing machine. She also needed to do her laundry, and my clothes were in the way. I wash my clothes about twice a week. I don't understand why this is a problem. But as she needed to use the washing machine, even if it was only to wash a couple of items of underwear, she found a reason to start an argument, taking the opportunity to create conflict. She told me that this was her house and that I couldn't behave like that towards her. I replied that, in reality, this was my father's house, and that she had done nothing in her entire life to deserve to live here, except look for a man and marry him so she could stay at home and do nothing. She was being unpleasant, and I simply responded in the same way. The argument escalated considerably. After a while, she left, and I thought the matter was over. But that night, after my father returned home, Veronica started screaming that one of her designer handbags, recently acquired and valued at $1,500, was missing. She immediately began accusing me of stealing it. She told my father that, as I didn't have a job yet, she was pretty sure I was responsible. Instead of defending me, for some reason, my father took her side and said that if I really hadn't taken anything, then I should talk to her instead of getting defensive. After a few minutes of shouting at each other, she simply decided to call the police. It was the most humiliating experience of my life. They searched the whole house, including my room and my belongings, leaving everything in complete disarray. but they found nothing. In the end, the handbag was reported stolen, but they let me go because I clearly didn't have it in my possession and there was no evidence against me. That night, feeling deeply humiliated, I decided to leave. Since then, I've been staying with a friend. I didn't speak to my father, and he didn't try to stop me when I left either, which made me understand exactly who he cares about and who he doesn't. But 2 days ago, he called me in tears and told me that Veronica had confessed. It turns out that she had taken the bag and left it at a friend's house a few days ago with the specific intention of framing me. She revealed the truth to my father after he caught her talking to that friend on the phone. He heard her say how happy she was that I had finally left. He told me he was very sorry and that he wasn't talking to Veronica at the moment. He wanted to make it up to me by inviting me to come home and apologizing in person. But I told him that the only way I would come home would be if she no longer lived there. Something I consider logical after what she did. That is to say, after what she did to her daughter, the least I would expect is that. I also informed him that now that I knew the truth, I was going to report her and press charges against her for this. I was furious. But he tried to calm me down and asked me not to because we could resolve all this in private. That pressing charges against her would only make the situation worse to the point of no return. He wanted us to get along, but I didn't want that at all. So he started begging me not to, telling me that she had only confessed to end our fight and get me to come back. The funny thing is that she didn't keep it private when she called the police, so I don't see any reason for me to. I'm going to proceed anyway. Besides, she did all that just to get me out of the house, and my dad refuses to see it or doesn't care. There is something really worrying about that woman. And if my father can't see it, and still hopes that at some point we will get along and sort this out, then there is also something not right with him. The only reason I have doubts is because the friend I am staying with pointed out that if I do this, I can practically say goodbye to any possibility of reconciliation with my father in the future. It's clear that he loves Veronica for some reason, and if I press charges against her, he will probably never be able to forgive me, and I will lose him forever. She also reminded me that my father made many sacrifices for me in the past. After my mother died, he practically raised me alone without support from other family members. No one was willing to help us, either financially or emotionally. He had to make many sacrifices, and my friends simply wanted me to consider this before making a decision. That's why I'm somewhat undecided about what I want to do. Although I am convinced that there is nothing wrong with pressing charges against Veronica, what worries me is my father. Do you think I owe him that for raising me? Or does this incident justify breaking off my relationship with him? Edit. As many have asked me, I didn't mention it because I didn't consider it relevant, but my father is approximately 48 years old, and Veronica is 37. There is an 11-year age difference between them. Veronica used to work when she met my father, but she quit her job after marrying him. That's why I made that comment about her in my post. I don't think I said anything wrong because I know exactly what kind of woman she is. Even if my father can't see it, I can. If I had known what she would turn into after the marriage, I would have warned my father from the start. Although it probably wouldn't have helped, because if my father doesn't see that what she did was wrong, then nothing will make him understand. Update 1. I have decided to go ahead and press charges against Veronica. Whatever my relationship with my father may have been, I cannot allow that to interfere with what needs to be done. I respect him, I love him, and I admire everything he has done for me, but that doesn't mean I'm going to let Veronica get away with this. And if he considers this to be a minor problem, then it shows me that our relationship has deteriorated. I honestly think he should have anticipated this, because he was the one who called me and revealed the truth. If he didn't want me to take action against him, then he shouldn't have told me anything. I think that's exactly why he didn't want me to press charges, because he knows he was the one who confessed to me and he would feel guilty if it all went wrong for her. But now, it's too late. Things will definitely go wrong for Veronica, and I'm not going to let this pass. I've already consulted with some friends, and they've put me in touch with a good lawyer. It will cost me money, but I think it will be worth it. I have some savings that my mother left me. I didn't want to use them because I considered them my reserve for emergencies or unforeseen situations. But at the moment, I'm already in negotiations with a company, and if everything goes well, I'll start work next month. they're offering good pay, and I think that justifies taking the risk. It's time for Veronica to receive some kind of correction. She can't continue with her life without facing consequences. So I am proceeding with the lawsuit, and if I win, she will have to pay damages. Alternatively, she can choose to settle this matter out of court, which I am also willing to consider. But what I want is for her to understand that she has lost. Perhaps many people will think this is petty and vindictive, but I don't care. This is important to me, and I will do it regardless of what others think. Update 2. During the last 2 weeks, I have not been in contact with my father. He tried to get in touch with me several times, but I did not reply because I knew I was acting against his wishes. I did not want to argue with him, and I was sure that if we spoke, he would try to persuade me not to go ahead with this, so I simply remained silent. I continued with the legal proceedings, consulted with the lawyer, made all the necessary preparations, and 2 days ago, Veronica finally received the official notification. That same afternoon, my father started messaging me again. Over the previous few days, he had chosen to remain silent, probably because I wasn't responding or willing to talk to him. But once Veronica was notified, that stopped mattering. He expressed his great disappointment to me, indicating that this was not the way he wanted me to handle things, and that he thought it was crazy that I wasn't even taking his perspective into account. He said that he hadn't raised me to act this way. To this, I finally responded. I told him that he had done an excellent job raising me, but that now it was my decision whether I wanted to approach this issue with revenge or forgiveness. And I chose not to forgive Veronica for the simple reason that she didn't even show any remorse. How could I even consider forgiving someone who didn't even apologize for their actions? It didn't make sense, so I had to choose another path, and I don't regret it either. Because, based on his upbringing, he also taught me not to let anyone look down on me. Therefore, he can't get angry because I'm acting exactly as he taught me. I can't behave according to his convenience, and he needs to understand that. I am his daughter, and I am deeply grateful for everything he has done for me, but at the end of the day, I am also an independent person, and he must allow me to be so. Besides, if he really believes that I can forgive Veronica after what she did, then he is completely wrong. She doesn't deserve my forgiveness, nor did she even ask for it. Over the last few weeks, she had numerous opportunities to apologize. And although I'm sure he knew that he was considering suing her, he didn't even try, even if it was to protect himself. I don't understand why he is upset. If he really wanted everything to be resolved peacefully, without legal intervention, then he could have spoken to her too. That's what should have happened. I need him to understand that. I wrote him a message explaining all this. And his response? Complete silence. I guess he just didn't have any arguments to defend himself with, because everything I said was true and he knows it. He'd be a fool not to recognize that. For now, the lawsuit will continue, and it will be up to Veronica whether she prefers to take this to trial or settle out of court. But either way, she will have to face the consequences. And not only have I filed a civil lawsuit against her, but also criminal charges for filing a false report. According to my lawyer, this is likely to result in a criminal record. This won't change much about her situation since she doesn't work, but it's the right thing to do at this point. Update 3. I'm sorry I haven't provided any updates for so long, but I got a job and I don't have as much free time as I used to. I also moved during this period, as I've bought my own flat, so I've been quite busy. In any case, I know you're probably reading this because you want to know what happened between my father, Veronica, and me. Indeed, I went ahead with the lawsuit, but within days she had hired a lawyer and expressed an interest in reaching an out-of-court settlement. Now, although I would have loved to prolong this process and make it a huge hassle for my father and Veronica, I too was facing financial constraints. So if she offered me a simple resolution, I was willing to accept the deal. In short, I got $15,000 out of this, which is 10 times the value of the bag. In addition, Veronica had to do community service because, despite the agreement, she had filed a false police report. Fortunately for her, as it was her first and only offense, the consequences were not more severe. The positive thing is that she now has a record for this incident, as a false report is a rather serious matter. I am convinced that both the lawyer's fees and the financial compensation came from my father's resources. It is unlikely that she had that kind of money available. Even the handbag in question was a birthday present from my father. But at least I got something out of the situation, and that was my main objective. Unfortunately, since all this happened, my father and I have not communicated again. I have not blocked him, nor has he blocked me. We can contact each other if we wish, but neither of us simply wants to. The last message I sent him was the one I mentioned in my previous update, where I questioned his behavior. He did not present any defense to my arguments, so he never responded. And to this day, he still has not responded. I don't have much more to add on the matter. It is a strange piece, but sometimes I deeply miss my father. Even after his marriage to Veronica and my departure for university, we kept in touch, and he has been a fundamental part of my life for so long that it is strange to accept that things will never be the same again. But in this situation, each of us feels that we have taken the right position, and at least I know that I will not change my stance, even if it means that my relationship with my father is irreparably damaged. Update 4. It has officially been a year since I last spoke to my father. I don't know what he has been up to recently. The only information I get about him is when I attend family gatherings. He doesn't even participate in these gatherings, so I haven't seen him in a long time. I'm not surprised that he has distanced himself from the rest of the family, as he never had close ties with anyone in the family from the beginning. As far as I know, he and Veronica are still together and are currently considering adoption. I found out about this a week ago at a cousin's wedding, and I was surprised. I didn't know that my father wanted to have another child. It's not that I'm opposed to having a sibling, I'm just surprised by the decision. I suppose it makes sense. They want to move on with their lives. However, at some point, I think I just expected my father to choose me, his daughter, over Veronica. On the other hand, as petty as it may sound, I really hope they don't manage to adopt anyone. Veronica doesn't have the qualities necessary to be a mother, and I don't even understand how my father accepted the idea of adopting a child with her, of all people, especially after what she did to me. I can't imagine what kind of example Veronica will be for that child. I consider that his future is already compromised even before he is adopted. It's not that I wish my father ill, I'm just being realistic. Sooner or later, he will realize how empty his relationship with Veronica is and what a big mistake he has made. And by the time that happens, it will be too late to repair his relationship with others. Update 5. I didn't think I would post another update after so long, but here I am. 3 years have passed and many things have changed. For example, I'm getting married. My fiancé and I have been together for the last 3 years. In fact, when I published my last update here, I had already started dating him. We have been sharing a house for the last year and a half, and he recently proposed to me. It's been a week since then, and a couple of days ago I announced it on all my social networks. Obviously, I was extremely happy, and many people congratulated me. One of the people who contacted me after a long period of not having any contact was my father. It was quite strange, considering that we hadn't spoken for almost 4 years. Last year I heard from some relatives that he and Veronica were going through difficulties in their relationship, and that, at that time, they were living apart. I also heard that he had developed problems with alcohol, which, honestly, did not surprise me. As I understood it, my grandfather also faced alcoholism in the final stages of his life, so it seems to be a family problem. For some reason, my father didn't used to drink much, but this seems to have changed recently. He congratulated me, and in the spirit of new beginnings, I replied by thanking him. But that was all. I said no more. Then he wrote back and confessed that he had been meaning to contact me for a long time. He said that, for the last 4 years, he had constantly reflected on how right I was about everything I had said to him. He admitted that he had been extremely selfish and that he was now paying the consequences. He told me that he and Veronica had separated and were considering divorce. Naturally, he would have to provide her with an allowance, as she hadn't worked for a long time. And although she didn't work by choice, he was still legally obliged to support her until she decided to remarry or give up financial support for whatever reason. But until that happened, he was committed to continuing to pay her. He explained to me that their relationship had become very bitter in recent years, and that he could never really forgive her for what she did. But he also couldn't forgive himself because, over time, he realized that it had all been the result of his own decisions. However, by the time he finally admitted his mistake, I had already cut off all communication with him, and he felt too ashamed to try to contact me. He also revealed that he refused to adopt a child with Veronica because he felt that she was only trying to replace me. This caused a serious conflict between them and was the main reason why they ended up separating. He concluded his message by congratulating me again and expressing his regret. He told me that this was the perfect opportunity to give me his blessing for my future and to ask for my forgiveness for everything that had happened. I'm not going to lie, I cried when I read that message. He is my father, after all. But even after reading all these messages, I preferred to reply with a simple thank you for the congratulations and nothing more. Could I forgive him and try to rebuild our relationship, especially now that Veronica is not around? Yes, I could. But the fact that he chose Veronica after what happened, considering how damaging it could have been for me, is something I cannot easily forgive. His petty revenge could have had major repercussions if she had been clever enough to hide the handbag in my room, for example. I could end up with a criminal record, which would make it difficult for me to find a job. And my father took her side? Well, that's a consequence he'll have to live with. I'll be glad if he finally gets a divorce and manages to ensure that Veronica doesn't even receive alimony, with any luck, but that's as far as my relationship with him will go. I can anticipate some comments that will wish for a happy ending where I reestablish communication with my father, but that will not happen in my case. Update 6. When we decided to get married, we knew that organizing a wedding would take time, but we didn't imagine it would be so much, even more complicated than a divorce. So my father's divorce came through before my wedding. I have been to weddings with 200 guests, which is 5 times bigger than mine, and I can't imagine everything that organizing them involved. They probably hired professionals for that, but in our case, we couldn't afford a wedding planner, so we took care of everything ourselves. Maybe that was the mistake, but we didn't want to spend thousands of dollars on a simple celebration. Regarding the divorce, my father has definitively ended his relationship with Veronica, and in what could be considered positive news, he has avoided having to pay her alimony. This is because he used what she did to me as grounds for divorce. In this state, there is the possibility of fault-based divorce, which generally applies in cases of infidelity, something that, knowing Veronica, I would not be surprised if it had happened. But it also applies more generally when it can be shown that one of the parties is responsible for the end of the marriage. In Veronica's case, her false accusation against me, which destroyed my relationship with my father and ultimately her marriage, constituted sufficient evidence. I see it as a positive thing because if she had received a pension, she probably wouldn't have needed to work, but now she will have to, and with her background, finding a good job won't be easy. He will have to work at something, but it is likely to be less favorable than what he would have gotten without that background. I know my father regrets the loneliness after having pushed everyone away from his life. Not only me, but also other relatives, as I mentioned earlier. But that's the problem with toxic relationships. They isolate you from everyone, and when they end, they leave you completely alone. This is likely to be my last update, because with Veronica out of the picture, I don't expect to have much more to share. No, my father did not attend the wedding. I clarify this here because I have been asked numerous times. I can also mention that Veronica has found a job in a factory, which is the little information I have obtained about her.